Got a bit of a cold, I'm afraid. Yeah, horribly snotty.
Tell you what, Hilary Mantel didn't get that reaction. She was speaking here.
How many hits did she? Oh no, that's fair.
Well, welcome to Cheltenham.
Thank you.
So,
pleased to be here.
Is this what it was like playing for Wham in 1986?
Very similar.
Right.
Yeah. Bigger.
Yeah. Well, I've got the beard, but not much else. So yeah, we're here to talk about your great book, Wham, George and Me, right?
Yes.
A #1 hit.
#1 on Amazon for a short while. I believe it's clawing its way back up. Yeah, and I think #2 on the Sunday Times bestsellers. So yeah, exceeded expectations. I think as far as I was concerned. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. It's a great book. I mean, it's not just a book about what happened in Wham and afterwards. It's also a great book about friendship and two men, communicating over the years. Why did you write the book? I mean, it kind of ends in 1986, doesn't it? So for 30 years, you haven't really talked about it.
Well, I haven't talked about it necessarily for 30 years. I mean, it said a lot of what it needed to say at the time and sort of itself, if you like. Wham spoke for itself, largely. But being away from the public eye for a long, long time, consequent to two things really precipitated it. One was the reaction I received I wrote a newspaper piece in response to an online campaign to make Last Christmas a #1 on the first anniversary of George's death. And not having engaged really with the public en masse for a long time, it reminded me and slightly took me by surprise as to the depth of affection that existed for Wham and obviously for George and what I believe Wham represented. And then in the wake of his death, the tribute that Pepsi, Shirley and I gave at the Brits, standing there in front of what was actually an audience composed of a lot of young people, I got the sense that whilst they knew of George, and I think his achievements, perhaps less familiar with Wham's story, and that was an essential part of George and me, and I felt that was worth telling. A lot of people have asked me, did I need to set the record straight? I've never felt the need to set the record straight. The facts, as far as I'm concerned, speak for themselves. And it is a book about friendship because Wham was essentially the expression of our friendship. It was a representation, musically and image-wise, of us as youths, the exuberance of our youth, and also the energy of our friendship. That was something that we both derived a great pleasure from. And I think I know I'm going on at length here, but some of the photos that Emma Plater at Michael Joseph Penguin and I chose really, I feel, really convey that what we enjoyed about each other's company, and that essentially was what I think people saw in Wham.
I love the book. I mean, I think Wham and George Michael would be my mastermind subject. But even I learned things. For example, I didn't realize, I knew George as a child of, immigrants. His father was Greek Cypriot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize your father's Egyptian.
Yeah, well, Dad was an Egyptian Yemeni Jew, and his mum was an Italian Jew. He grew up in Alexandria in the 30s. He was born in 33. And he led his father was a clerk in the law courts. And he went to a British public school, and he was quintessentially British.
That happens. A lot of immigrants are more British in the...
Yeah. He served in the RAF. He was an interpreter. He had an amazing ability with languages. He was a genuine linguist.
And he got your surname from a street name he saw.
Yeah, and I think he understood that if he was to make his life, because the family were expelled from Egypt consequent to the Suez crisis, excuse me, and they were kicked out 24 hours notice, the whole family. The dad was serving at the time. He had to come back to the UK to look after his mum who was ill. But I think he realised that if he were to establish himself and feel genuinely part of society, then he was Albert Mario Zachariah. And I think he felt that if we were Zacharias, it might work against us. And actually, I have to say that was probably the one of the greatest things that Dad did for my brother and I. Much as I'd have liked to have been a Zachariah and been called out last on the register each day, that would have enjoyed. But yeah, he did us a big favour, giving us the name of Ridgeley.
A narrative has emerged over the years that maybe you were the junior partner in Wham. But what the book does, it explains very gently that actually without you, it never would have begun, in that you were the driving force behind the first band. It was called The Executive.
Yeah.
And in creating Wham, in that George was a very shy, self-conscious, sensitive young man.
He was, and he lacked the ability to assert his confidence. His confidence was innate and existed with regard to certain things. But he wasn't quite as garrulous or able to express his confidence the way that I did. And it was I don't dine out on the fact that I was the chap that got George to be in a band, but it was so much more than that, in the sense that George understood very well that Wham could never have existed without the two of us. It wouldn't have been the same if it had been someone else he had the lion's share of the ability, but that's not what defined Wham necessarily. As I said, I think the music was in some ways an expression of what existed between us as friends. We were very, very intimate and close friends. I loved him very much, and he loved me. So it was, and I think that's something that people identified with. They really saw, without wishing to repeat myself. But so
the fascinating thing for me reading the book was the stories behind some of the songs. Because another narrative emerged when George died, which was completely fake news, that he'd given you a co-writing credit on Careless Whisper just out of generosity, when actually you were a key part of writing that song over many years, and also you were involved in several other of the hits which are still played today.
Yeah, I mean, when we formed the Executive on November the 5th, 1979, which was a seminal day for me. I took the decision to leave school, and I went into Bushy Meads that morning and asked my form tutor if I could see her at break time. And it was one of my rare appearances that term, because I wasn't a particularly assiduous student in that respect.
You were a bad boy, as the song goes.
Yeah, bad boy or an idiot, one of the two. And so I said to her, I want to speak to you because I'm leaving school today. And she said, "That's just as well, Andrew, because we were going to ask you to leave school." Well, I beat her to it anyway. So, and then I got my place at, I got an interview at Casio, and then I phoned George that evening and said, "We're forming a band." Yeah. No ifs, no buts. It had been a subject that had been swirling around for a couple of years or so, and so I gave him this shove over the line of I railroaded him into forming a band. And then, so the Executive, we wrote songs and together. And when that disbanded, we kept writing songs. And the first three songs we wrote, it seems strange recalling it, to be honest, now, were Wham Rap, Club Tropicana, and Careless Whisper. They weren't. Club Tropicana and Careless Whisper weren't fully formed at that point. They were sort of just kind of
Ideas,
yeah. fleshed out ideas, yeah.
What happened with Careless Whisper seems to kind of epitomize what happened with the band, in that, you had it very early on, but you saved it for almost your mid-career before it became out. And this extraordinary thing happened with the recording of it, in that you went to America to record it. And tell us what happened.
Well, we recognised that Careless Whisper sat somewhat without the Wham, not so much ethos, but style. And it certainly, during the music that covered the first album, it was difficult to see it fitting in there. It was a far more mature track and sophisticated song than the stuff that Wham's early career was built on. And so, because of that, it was difficult to know kind of what to do with it. And as George's songwriting grew, and as it became apparent to us both that ultimately his destiny lay outside of the parameters that Wham imposed, because he was never going to be able to develop fully as an artist and a songwriter within those constraints. They were just too restricting, because it was so much about us, our friendship as youths, and that expression of the vitality and vivacity of youth. It was too narrow. And so he asked me if he could release it as a solo track. And it was obvious to me that it would make a fantastic first sort of stepping stone for him. And I was quite happy to concede to that. You know, he was my best friend, and I understood that you know, ultimately he'd have to move on from Wham. By its nature, it was going to be short-lived. The scale and the speed of our success hastened the fact that we brought it to a close after such a short time.
An extraordinary thing happened with the recording of it, in that you went to America and had one of the world's most famous producers, Jerry Wexler, record a version. And George, was a very shy guy a few years beforehand, said he didn't like it. You both didn't like it, and recorded his own version.
Well, that's right. He had been persuaded. When we recorded the demo, we got a fantastic publishing deal on the back of its first full recording of it as a full song, and it was a great demo. It had that magic, and when he recorded it in Muscle Shoals, he came back after with the mix, the final mix, and I can't remember where we were, but he played it to me, and my heart sank. It had lost all its what made it special, the magic, and then he recorded it. By that time, you know, his ability to make records was really coming to the fore, and he made an iconic record.
And he tried 11 saxophonists.
Yeah.
Before. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible.
And also maybe a bit annoying.
I would imagine.
Well, I mean, what were you a bit annoyed by number 9? You were like. Most people wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Yeah.
But actually, it was recorded or played back. I think it was recorded slightly faster because Steve. Oh, crikey, what is it? I've forgotten. Steve Gregory, I think, was the sax player. It wasn't, his sax wasn't in the right key for the song, so they had to speed it up slightly. And the tone and it just worked at that speed. So that, you know, George identified that as the one.
Your affection and your friendship really comes across in the book. But also, it's very interesting that you spent a lot of time together. You did find him quite irritating sometimes.
Yeah,
and,
we irritated each other in equal measure, I think.
Can we talk about some of his annoying habits? First of all, his hair. You know, he did look like Lady Diana for about 2 years between 1984 and 86.
Yeah, or she looked like him, one of the two.
It's hard to tell. And apparently he once, for the Careless Whisper video, they spent £10,000 flying his sister over just to do his hair.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that emoji, don't they? The guy with his... and it was like that, you know, whenever the hair came to the hair, it was torturous. It really was.
But you had naturally good hair.
My hair got cut. That was it.
Yeah.
I washed it, put a comb through it. That's hair.
He's went curly.
Yeah.
He's went curly in the heat.
Curly in the heat.
Yeah.
Curly in the wet. Curly overnight.
Also, he had a favourite side, didn't he? He would only be photographed from one side.
Yes. I'm still not sure which side that was, but
I know that. I know this. It was his left side.
Yeah.
Mastermind question number 9.
Well, actually, on the front of the cover of the book, he's to my right. I mean, the photos. I thought, it's a photo. I look pretty much the same in all of them. But you could have 1,000 photos done, and 2 would be there were 2 that he would deem acceptable. Yeah. And
also, you do take the mickey out of his dress sense. In that, again, I've got to say, there's great photos in the book. You come across okay. He is wearing some bizarre stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I made some gaffes.
MC Hammer kind of
don't.
going on, and a lot of jackets with no shirt.
Yeah, the worst one was the outfit on the big tour, which was part Matador, part Nijinsky. And it was I just couldn't get it. It looked like a Christmas fairy, but
he had a moment of realization. I think he had a very good sense of humor about his own dress sense over the years. But also, he didn't particularly like traveling, whereas you were really into travel and touring. And he hated every minute of it.
He didn't like touring. He enjoyed live performance, but he didn't like touring. He didn't like living out suitcase. He didn't like being away from the comforts of home, his big mugs of tea, his cans of Coke left around the house, at least 90 at any one time. So he was not a big fan of touring, which was a shame because I love getting to new places and new countries and playing. That's what you get in a band, because you want to write songs, you want to perform them. God willing, you get to record them.
I've got to ask you the question about his sexuality. I don't particularly care myself, but it's interesting that in the book, he kind of came out to you, was it during the Club Tropicana video recording?
I think George had been coming to that point. He told us then, and because I think he had decided at that point that he was homosexual. As I understand it, he still had women in his life after that point, but I think he'd come to the realization that he was homosexual. But he phoned me up that morning. I thought we were going to have a chat about where we were going to breakfast. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner being really very important points of the day for me. And Shirley was already in the room. He'd told her, and he said to me, came straight out and said, "Andy, I'm gay." And I thought, bit of a surprise, but then I started thinking the dots started joining up, and it made sense. But it was, as you've quite rightly identified, an irrelevance to us, to me, to the relationship. Not irrelevant to our career, and that's one of the reasons why he wasn't prepared to make it public. There were 2 reasons. He was a very private man. He felt very strongly that there was a distinction between his private life and his public life, and so much was asked of us and of him throughout the course of our public life that he needed to reserve something for himself. He also realized that it might be detrimental to Wham's pursuit of success and the image. So,
and he was incredibly ambitious, wasn't he? That's another thing that comes out from your book, in that when you were getting wasted making the Last Christmas video, he was watching every still overnight to make sure the right things were picked.
Yeah, and sometimes the wrong things. I don't know, something like 2 minutes or whatever, I'm not quite sure quite where it is, but there's a shot which he had run backwards because he didn't like whatever whatever the original shot was, and it looks just like he's taken a snowball right in the knackers. and you can see, and for the life of me, I have no idea why he chose to use that particular frame. But yeah, he was forensic about the music. He was forensic about the videos.
And the chart success and following the sales.
Very much.
Yeah.
As the success confirmed his own belief in his abilities, and his confidence grew accordingly, and then he realised that pretty much, because he was right most of the time, that was self-perpetuating, and he had no hesitation in inserting his confidence. And
in that passage about when he comes out to you, you say something very interesting. You say, well, we didn't have that kind of friendship. We didn't talk about relationships. So what kind of friendship did you have with him? And was it banter and music? What was it?
It was largely silliness. It was a constant sort of teasing and amusement. Humour was one of the central pillars of our relationship, and whether it was writing lewd poems about the fella who sat in front of us in the English class about his ears, or making the spoof radio show tapes in his bedroom. It was humour and that gentle silliness was really what our relationship was built on. That and our shared sort of obsession for pop music and the charts in the 70s.
Do you wish it was a bit more intimate or not?
No, it was intimate. A lot of that didn't need to be said. It was we understood each other. We had an intimacy in our relationship which didn't require an analysis of it, or it to be expressed all the time to one another. There were other people in our lives who less so me, but George, I'm not sure whether he confided, that sort of thing. Really, his music became that medium for his expression latterly in his career. That was where I think that he conveyed that intimacy, and it was made known. Whether that was a function of not being able to, or not a function, but a consequence of an inability to share that perhaps with anyone in person, I'm not sure. But no, ours was generally a very light. There was a real lightness that existed between us.
So you went on to have insane success, and it's kind of amazing to read about you at such a young age. Meeting Elton John and going for lunch with Elton John and mooning Joan Collins on a boat, and Jimmy Page, who you admired from Led Zeppelin, coming to a gig. And,
yes, poor Jimmy Page.
You sleeping through the Band-Aid call. What for you were one of the more surreal moments of that heady success?
Well, certainly meeting Jimmy Page was something that was very, very much otherworldly.
His daughter was a fan.
His daughter was a fan, yeah, which is unless anyone's in any sort of confusion as to why Jimmy Page was at a Wham concert, which I understand could be perceived as slightly odd. It was.
Did you talk about guitar playing?
No, I think I was just mouthing, like a goldfish. Our tour manager came in, knocked to the dressing room and said, Jimmy Page is here, and it just no, not sure he is. He was extremely courteous and deferential, and all I could think is, oh my God, Jimmy Page has been dragged to a Wham concert. It was, but he was very gracious, and he didn't let it slip whether he was dying inside like I was.
And then you played at, you were on stage at Live Aid, and what was that like? You met all your heroes. You met Freddie Mercury and
similarly Surreal. Yeah, Freddie.
Bono had his arm around you.
I think he was drunk. yeah, to be on stage with those ones, the icons of music, felt really strange. I think you can't really make that leap of imagination to, whilst one's fans and perhaps the audience will perceive you on a similar level, it's impossible, I would say, as someone who grew up with those artists and that music, to conceive of yourself of being of the same.
Yeah, and also you were
level.
very young. You were like 22 or something by that stage. 20.
Yeah, probably about 20. Yeah, 22. Yeah,
It's
21,
insane.
22.
So, and I guess I'm speeding through this because I could actually talk to you for 5 hours. I realise I haven't got that much time.
We can have a lunch sometime.
We'll have a lengthy lunch.
They're the best ones.
So the breakup of Wham, your mixed feelings about that really come across. And that by that stage, you were being hounded by the press, and part of you had had enough. But equally, you loved touring, you loved being in a band, and George decided to just have one final concert, which seemed to have really pissed you off.
Yeah,
Pissed off thousands of people.
Yeah, possibly millions. I felt that it was a slight betrayal of the fans that had supported us globally. I felt we should have toured that last show. It would have been a wonderful thing to have done to bid farewell to our global audience. But I could see the logic. You know, there was going to be, as far as he was concerned, it was one show. It was an idea that had a purity in his mind that wasn't going to be solid and so therefore it was just the one, which was a disappointment. It was a real.
Even more agonizingly, he said no to a $3 million Pepsi advert.
Yeah, and then went and did a Coke advert a year later. Yeah, no, that one has never been forgiven.
Yeah, I mean, blimey. But I guess, you know, what the really heartbreaking thing in the book for me is, I mean, for you, I guess, in that you work writing songs, you were a central part of creating Wham, and then he basically decided that he was going to be the creative force. And I guess that must have been quite difficult when he just decided to take control.
Well, it was a mutual decision. We discussed that, and it was apparent to us both that his songwriting had developed at a pace that far outstripped mine. And if I'd have insisted on a co-write or two, then I'm sure that I would have had a co-write or two. However, there was a logic that was unarguable about him taking on that songwriting role, or the sole songwriting duty, and I saw the logic in that. You know, we had set ourselves goals and ambitions, and we were really hungry to achieve them.
But it takes strength and humility as a young man to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, it wasn't a wholly easy. It was easy on the one hand, I could see all the logic, but on the other hand, it was difficult because it did diminish my creative contribution to the group. So, and I think I probably didn't really foresee some of the consequences to that at the time. Our advice was non-existent, to be honest, back in those days. We were, on the one hand, it worked because we were allowed to get on with things, and by and large, you know, it worked really well. On the other hand, you know, a little bit of guidance probably wouldn't have gone amiss. So, on balance, in hindsight, looking at it, you know, for the greater good and for the goals that we both, our mutually held aspirations, it was the right thing to do, you know, whatever the sacrifice was.
Do you have any regrets about that time, apart from sleeping through the phone call invitation to join Band Aid?
Well, it was actually, what had happened was a fax was sent to the office, and Siobhan, who was our PA, would compile all the following week's obligations and commitments in a lengthy letter, which was then posted out. And I used to scan it, and you'd see sort of Top of the Pops. That was obviously important. And show at Wembley, better go to that one. But because of there was a lot of, they wanted to keep Band Aid a secret. It had to be a secret, and part of its impact was that, it's a single with every artist that you've ever heard of. It was a very vague kind of charity or recording session, such and such on a Sunday. I'm thinking, that doesn't sound, there's no car, but it's being sent to pick us up. That really doesn't sound too important. I'll swerve that one and have a nice bacon and egg sandwich instead.
And you missed the famous fight between George and Paul Weller, apparently. And George famously made the remark to Paul Weller, "You don't have to be at every day of your life."
Yeah, that sounds a lot like the sort of thing that George
I would have liked to be there for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you made a solo record, and did you feel like you fulfilled all your musical ambitions, or not?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the style and the was perhaps ill-advised to have chosen to sort of depart so far from the kind of pop style that Wham had inhabited that space. It was never going to be quite the same sort of thing. But to try to move quite so far away from that was probably not the smartest move.
Did you almost have reunions? I mean, I know you appeared on stage in the 90s with George at the Rock in Rio, right?
Yeah, but they were occasions where, I mean, I'd appeared with him once or twice previously. I think he had a birthday. I think it was the NEC. I did a. There we go. It was the NEC. Thank you for reminding me. So I did appear with him once or twice, but we did. It was a strongly held belief that we would never appear and perform as Wham, do a Wham gig, because we just felt that was a betrayal of the values and the concept that was Wham. It was us as kids, and us as 50-year-olds wasn't going to be edifying performing Bad Boys on stage. So
I'm just going to ask you one more question before I open it out to the audience, because I'm sure a lot of people have great questions. But how much did you stay in touch over the years after Wham was over?
Well, even though we brought Wham to a close at Wembley and waved that final goodbye and turned our backs on our audience, we went backstage, got changed, and went to a party together. So, and life was, in that sense, whilst our paths, our lives took slightly different paths, we saw each other really very regularly. And George, he'd consult me occasionally about matters that he was considering with regard to where he was going in life. Particular example of that was when I went over to see him it was late '86, I think, in Los Angeles, and he'd recorded "Kissing a Fool," and I think he was really struggling with whether he should jump fulsomely into that next phase of his career, because he knew what it was going to mean to him and the demands it would make of him and the sacrifices that he would have to make personally to do that.
Did he ever ignore your advice?
Frequently, but not on that occasion.
No. All right, I'm going to open it out to the audience. Can we have the lights? Oh, only about 5,000 questions. I'm going to suggest that you ask a question and not make a statement. That's my only suggestion. All right, so let's go at the back first. Back in the middle, there we go.
Hello, Andrew.
Good evening.
My name's Audrina, and I'm an author myself. but not in the same sense of best-selling. But I just wanted to know if you'd like a copy of my book, which I can sign for you.
Yes, by all means, do, please.
It has a very iconic title. It's called Where Did Your Heart Go?
Oh, it's a Wham song.
And I'd also like to know what your favourite Wham song is.
That would be I'm Your Man. I think that's a popular one. We could run through the whole lot and see which one gets the biggest cheer. But yeah, for me, I'm Your Man had that real energy and verve that I think we always try to convey through the music. But yeah, sure, I'll take a copy of the book. Anyone else got any books?
Question there on the left. Thank you for your question.
Do you still know the dance moves to Wham rap?
I'm not sure that I fully knew them at the time, to be honest.
What about Bad Boys?
Yeah, no, the same applies to that. No, I don't.
What about the nice little dance with Shirley? Do 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 do. I know it.
I want to ask you a question related to that. Have you watched the video of Michael Gove covering Wham rap?
I have seen that, yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you. Sorry. Guys, check it out. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is excruciating, isn't it? Yeah.
It wasn't the best rap to begin with, let's face it.
I mean, it wasn't, no, perhaps not. But it certainly didn't bear repeating by someone even less well-equipped.
All right, maybe right at the front. We've got to wait for the microphone, though, so people can hear your question. Just sorry, this is pre-rap.
Microphone volunteers, let's have a big hand for...
Hi, Andrew. I'm Sarah. Massive Wham fan, but if they were to make a film, like they have with Bohemian Rhapsody and the same with Elton John, who would play you, and who do you think would play George?
Good question.
Well, it is a good question, and you would be in a far better position to answer that than I am. I don't go to the movies very often, and I genuinely have absolutely no idea, so you might have to put that to the audience.
Sorry, just a question right next to it. Yeah.
Hello, Andrew. I've really enjoyed it so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, of the other 80s pop stars that you encountered, who were your most favourite and least favourite?
Good question.
And why?
Right, okay.
Paul Weller.
Actually, I have to say that I have great admiration for the man and his music. I'm a huge fan of the Jam, and
He's not here, you can see.
No, yeah. I would say I really admired Brian Ferry. I'm a huge Brian Ferry Roxy Music fan. I mean, obviously he spans the 70s and the 80s, but did some of the, I think he did some of the best stuff in the 80s, Avalon, and I think was an 80s album. Least, XTC I was a huge fan of, actually, so they must get a mention. They span the 2 decades. Least favourite, probably one of those daft birdie song things, I would imagine. I liked Duran Duran. I mean, that's some great stuff, didn't they? There's got to be some Duranis in the audience, haven't they? There you go. You see.
All right, over there. Let's go over there. Someone over there.
Hi, Andrew. I was 13 when you did the final and wasn't allowed to go. So is it ever going to be released on DVD or video or something for fans like me who didn't make it?
I would love that to happen, but it was never actually recorded, filmed or recorded for broadcast, and therefore George felt it just wasn't of the quality that he would be prepared to have made public. Now, whether there's something that could be done with that these days, you know, the technology may exist, but his position was very firmly held that it just wasn't of sufficient quality to be able to be released. So, regrettably, I don't think that's going to happen. Much as I would love to see, and I think that, you know, the fact that so many people, there were 1 million ticket applications for Wembley alone. So there was a huge appetite for it, but I don't think that appetite is going to be sated.
Maybe another question from over there? I can't really see anything.
Or from over here.
All right. Okay, let's go. Oh, my God. I'm so...
You've had yours, you naughty girl. There's always one, isn't there?
All right, over here.
Hello, Andrew. I see your mum's maiden name was Dunlop. I also have heard you quite a few times in the last few weeks saying the word wee as opposed to little. Did your mum have any Irish or Scottish links?
Mum was, half Scottish. Yeah, Dunlop, and my maternal grandmother was a Curry. So, yes, I'd say, Scottish.
So you're basically related.
Yeah. You
Okay,
didn't give me a
over
kiss
there,
last week in Piccadilly for my birthday, by the way.
Did I not? Wait,
No, you didn't.
was I in?
I was sixth in the queue and I still didn't get a kiss.
Well, I'm not sure you want a kiss now. I've got a filthy cold.
It's weird, because Hilary Mantel, again, had exactly the same question.
Hi, Andrew.
It's at the back, top left.
Top left.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
My name's Claire. I'm a lifelong Wham fan as well. I just wanted to ask you, what was the moment that you realised that you and George had made it as artists, as Wham?
I think really it was Top of the Pops. I mean, the signing of the deal was a huge moment. To actually be offered a record deal was something that was the holy grail at 18 years old. We'd aspired to that for a number of years, but actually being on Top of the Pops, it was, I'm sure everyone here knows, it was such an iconic program. It could, if you were on Top of the Pops, it had the power to make you, and it made us.
And you only got it because someone else pulled out.
Yeah, we were hovering just outside the top 40, and we wouldn't have got in had someone, don't know who that was, but obviously owe them a debt of gratitude, dropped out. We stepped in, and it made us. The Young Guns went up the charts like a rocket, and sold over 500,000 in the UK, and was a number 3 record.
Would you encourage your children into the business or not?
I think if they showed the talent for it, yeah. I mean, I think it's dead important to encourage whatever talent kids may have. Unlike my parents or George's parents, I think they should be encouraged and helped along the way.
Question, top right, just there.
Hi, Andrew. I was wondering, did you try and help George when he started getting into the heavy drugs?
There was no helping George, I'm afraid. He was very much of his own mind, and that was not something that he shared with his friends.
Do you think he was quite compartmentalized about his life?
Very much so. Yeah. There were certain aspects of his life that were off limits, and he wouldn't take advice on them. They weren't for discussion.
So he was a fearsomely strong-headed guy, wasn't he?
He grew to be able to. He grew in his confidence through his career, and it was on the one hand a strength, and at times it was a weakness.
Yeah. Okay, a few more questions. Someone is, that lady who's standing screaming. Oh, actually, maybe you first. Then the screaming lady.
Okay, hi Andrew, I'm over here.
Right,
over
thank
here.
you. Right.
I'm Heidi.
Hello, Heidi.
Big fan of yours and George for some years. Yeah, my question is, which song of George's which would you have liked to have co-written? If
That's
there's
a
one.
good question. Which song of it could you have made better?
Yeah, that's not really a fair question, is it?
And
No
also,
one's perfect.
I wondered if you had any further ambitions, if I could squeeze that in. So,
Have I further ambitions?
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to live a lot longer. But going back to, which one would I have liked to have written? Well, Christ.
Yeah, actually, good question. Which of his solo records did you really admire and thought, God?
So many.
Yeah.
So many really wonderful and definitive tracks in what he was conveying, what he wished to convey by that songwriting. You Have Been Loved, I think, is particularly special. I loved Amazing, actually. I thought that was, that sounded like a Wham track to me. Very envious that wasn't a Wham track. But there were, I mean, you know, an incredible canon of work. I loved Round Here.
Well, you get name checking round here.
Yeah. That's always nice to be immortalised, isn't it, for posterity in that way.
I feel like I've got to let that lady who I insulted ask a question. Sorry about that.
Hi, Andrew. My name is Sherilyn. Hi.
Thanks for standing up. Appreciate that.
Last Christmas, such a fantastic video. Can you tell us a little bit about the background of that? Was it as fun to make as it was to watch?
It was more fun, to be honest with you. Yeah, it was one long sort of weekend party. We'd taken a load of our friends out there with us. And I think we had a later flight. They got there early in the day, but when we got there, it was really, they were in full swing. Yeah, the first night we ended up skinny dipping in the swimming pool, much to the hotel owner's ire. And then it was just larks the whole time. You know, the snowball fight and the lunch scene lives long in my memory because of the rather patronising way that the assistant director came in and the table was set with glasses that had been topped right to the brim with red wine, and he came in like a Fellini and said, no, it can't be like this. It's got to look like we're halfway through lunch. And at which point my great friend David Ridler went along the table and drained every single one. Said, how's that for you, Chief?
Yeah.
No, thanks, Dave.
It was acceptable in the 80s. All right, I feel like maybe two more questions. There's someone with a Choose Life T-shirt at the back.
Hi, Andrew. I'm Charlotte from Solihull. I'm in utter awe to be in the same room as you.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's very flattering.
I thought she was going to say me. Such luck.
Just a quick question. I wondered whether you'd kept any of your fabulous tartan outfits from the Wham days.
They've all gone over the years to charitable endeavours, things like that. Some of them didn't survive the various shows, but no, I don't, and I can't say, to be perfectly honest, that pains me greatly. It was a good idea at the time.
You talk about in the book about how you had so little money that you shared clothes with George.
Yeah, initially we would have to we'd have to share what few clothes we had. And you can see that George will be wearing it one week or one photo shoot, and then I'll have I'll be wearing the string vest after a good boil wash, I should say. The following week, yeah, we were absolutely penniless. And,
yeah. Well, Ed Sheeran has a massive budget, and he still looks terrible. Over there, okay, over there.
Hi, Andrew. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Some friends here. We're all massive George and Wham fans. Two of us were at the final, so it's great to see you. It's difficult to speculate, but I'm very curious as to what you think your life would have been if you hadn't met George. And interestingly, do you think what would his life have been too? Would he have become a star?
Good question.
Oh.
One I should have asked.
Yes, that is a good question. One that I'm asked many times. Well, on my Twitter bio thing, it says Andrew Ridgeley, inveterate wastrel, and one-time member of an 80s beat combo. So I guess if you leave out the member of an 80s beat combo, that's probably what it would be, an inveterate wastrel. I couldn't say. I hate to think how I'd have ended up. George, that's a conundrum, that one.
You think he would have found a way to be a musician? Or was he just so shy that he never would have?
It wasn't a shyness. I think that I think he just lacked at that point in life that real conviction, the strength of his convictions. I have a feeling that he may well have made it in music ultimately, but it's difficult to say. Sliding doors, isn't it? Those moments that transform lives, and very difficult to know. I mean, he's on record as saying that I think his dedication in Bear was. He says that I think he's on a dedication to the greatest friend whose image he created George Michael in. And whether that was me or another, difficult, that sense, his own sense of being given that kind of direction, it may well not have happened.
Well, he said it several times in his life that he couldn't have done it without you, so I think you're being self-effacing.
Well,
all right, one more final question. All right, by the lady in the
the tartan lady.
Tartan lady in the middle.
Thank you. First, I'm sure I'm the same as everybody else, but without you, my teenage years would have been completely different, so God bless you for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to know what you think about the new film that's coming out called Last Christmas, and also, is it true that you have a cameo in it?
Well, I've not seen it, but I think I'm hoping, and I'm fairly sure it will be absolutely iconic. You may know it's written by Emma Thompson and starring Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding. And I've read the script. I was sent the script, and it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And I would hope that it would be as iconic a film as the song is. So what was the other part of your question? Oh, a cameo, yeah. I have a cameo. I do have a cameo. It is, yeah, it's not a speaking role, which slightly disappointing, but I can never remember my lines, so that's probably the reason why.
Well, thank you, everyone, for those brilliant questions, and thank you for your time today. Your music's played a big role in my life, so it's been a nice way to spend my birthday talking to you.
Yeah, happy birthday, Sam.
It's not about me.
It is on your birthday.
It is on my birthday. There's going to be there are signed copies of Andrew's book in Waterstones, which you can buy, and there's going to be a very short signing after this event if you want to get first name dedications, but you've got to be quick because it's going to be quite short. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for going. Much appreciated.